Hey YouTube, Alf Ranger Pain here. Thanks for checking out my post. Today I'm going to talk about a couple of Steel Challenge rifles that I built to be competitive within the sport. So without wasting too much time on fluff, let's get right into it. So this is the first rifle I built. I built this in the spring of 2019. I've been shooting Steel Challenge since the summer of 2018, so not very long. But I thoroughly enjoyed the sport, and I thought that to be competitive, I needed a better rifle than stock. I started shooting a stock rifle with no modifications, and I was finishing quite well, so I thought I could do better with a better rifle. I looked around and I saw that the top competitors were using rifles that were in the probably $1,200 to $1,500 range, all custom made. Very pretty rifles, don't get me wrong, but they were very expensive. So I have a lot of gunsmithing experience. I had two rifles that I bought for $50 a piece. This is one of them. I suspect they're both about 40 years old by the serial number, so they're not brand new, quite broken in. So I decided to work all the Ruger parts, and I'm not going to tell you exactly what I did to the triggers. You can go on YouTube and you can find a million videos of how to slick up your triggers and so forth. I'll show you what I did, but I won't tell you how I did it. So what I started out with is a standard Ruger stock. You all know what they look like. And I started to do modifications to it. So the first thing I did is I stripped it all down. I cut the butt square and I added on an extension piece to fit me. As you can see, I cut it shorter. I drilled holes to make it lighter. I have holes on the underside, here and here. And I also hogged out the channel to make it as light as I could in the front. Like I said, all of the internal components are stock Ruger parts. There's not one component in there that is not stock Ruger. I then added a Tactical Solutions lightweight barrel. This barrel is 15 ounces. Stock barrel is 31, so it takes half the weight off the front. Gun swings a whole lot faster, a whole lot better. On the fore end, I like to shoot with an extended grip. So this is a piece of foam from an exercise machine I had. It fits just fine. I hold it on there with this is a locking nut from an RCBS die. I had it machined out bigger so it slipped over the barrel. I just clamp it on and I can move it to wherever I want my hand to be. The sight is an NC Star. It's a $39 sight that I've had for a couple of years. It can go on and off, and I never have an issue with re-zeroing. It works fine. It's extremely bright. I do have a couple of Vortex Vipers that I use on pistols. I tried one on. It's actually not as bright, even with brand new batteries on the top level setting. And you know, with Steel Challenge, the sun is on those targets. You can wash out your dot. So for $39, this is staying on. So total cost, the rifle was $50, the barrel's $200, you're into $250, the sight was $39, I'm into it for $289, and I'm competitive and sometimes beating the guys with the fancy rifles. Not taking anything away from them, but you know, talk to guys that spend $275 for a trigger group. Mine didn't cost me anything. This is from a mouse pad. A little cheek rest is from a mouse pad. I built it up with some wood. One of the goals building this rifle was to get it under 4 pounds. I got it to 3.95, including the sight. But when I added the butt pad, it brought it up to like 4 pounds, 1.5 ounces. So it's just a little over 4 pounds now because of the butt pad. So let's talk about why I did all this, okay? Steel Challenge, as you know, is they call it drag racing with guns. You got to be fast. That's how you win. Fast and don't miss. Most of the stocks I see that people are putting on, they're like the Barracudas and they're the shorter stocks, and your hand placement is here. I find that very hard to control the rifle. A very short movement with your hand here is extended out, so your muzzle, if you move a half an inch here, out at the muzzle, you're probably moving 8 inches. Okay, very hard to control. A little error here is magnified out front. So the grip I use a forward grip, finger pointing, and I use the stop as my guide to where I want to be. So when I bring the gun up, I'm pointing at my target. Pointing at my target. It's a trick that shotgunners used to use and probably still do. This is how I feel a gun should fit. You should have a gun fit you so that when you're getting your sight picture before the buzzer goes off, you should be able to bring that rifle down, still looking at your target, close your eyes, snap that gun up and pull the trigger and hit your target. I'm going to say a 12-inch target at 15 yards, it should be a no-brainer if the gun fits you right. If the gun doesn't fit you right, it's not going to happen. You're going to bring it up. Your dot's going to be in one place one time. Your cheek is never on the gun itself. It's got to fit you. Okay, whatever you have to do. So this has been tweaked several times to fit me. I love the way it fits. The gun is just great for me. It's working for me. So I enjoyed this so much that I decided to build an iron sight gun. So my iron sight gun basically has all the modifications that were done to the other gun. This started out as a Fagan stock. You know, some of you old timers may remember Fagan stocks from when they were in business. I got a deal on this. The stock was $100. I had to kick it around the house for, oh God, 25, 30 years. It never fit me right. It never fit me right with a scope. It didn't fit me right with iron sights. So I decided to carve it up, stripped it all down, refinished it. Same thing, I took a pound out of this stock. This laminated wood is very heavy. People say to me, oh, it's too weak. This, being laminated wood, this is like iron. I've tried everything I can do to flex this. I can't flex this, it doesn't move. It's nice and light. Like I said, I took a pound out. I hogged out the channel, as I did with the other rifle. That's all hogged out. Same thing, Tactical Solutions barrel. Comes with sights. All the trigger work and the bolt work is the same for both guns, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I'll do you some close-ups of what I did to that. Trigger stops. This one has a trigger stop that I drilled into the trigger guard. The other one I drilled through the trigger. It doesn't matter to me. Some people don't like feeling the hole in the trigger. It doesn't matter to me. Again, all stock components within the Ruger. I did not put muzzle brakes on these. In all the years I've been shooting, 55 years, I never saw the need for a muzzle brake on a 22, especially if it's gripped right. So no muzzle brakes, they add weight. Even when I talk to the top shooters, some of them will admit that the muzzle brake does no good, but they look cool. I didn't need the extra weight up front and the extra expense to do that. So this gun weighs, in this condition right now, 3.88 pounds. So it's under 4 pounds once again. It's a little bit more forward heavy because the fluted barrel, this was non-fluted. I bought it because it was $170 on eBay as opposed to $350 or whatever Tactical Solutions gets. So I can live with that extra weight. It doesn't matter. I mean, the guns feel the same. Both triggers let off at 1.25 pounds, 1.25 pounds. It's been reliable in this gun for over 2,000 competition rounds. I don't know how many practice rounds. I've never had the trigger malfunction. The trigger weight has never changed. It's still 1.25 pounds. That one I've only got about 200, 250 rounds through it with the lighter trigger. So I won't shoot that in a match yet until I get a couple of thousand rounds through it and make sure it's going to be reliable and maintain that weight. Let's see. Let me talk to you about Tactical Solution barrels for a minute. I bought the lightest barrel I could find, which was the Tactical Solutions at the time. One thing I don't like about it is the barrel, the sleeve is aluminum all the way to the breech face. So when you start getting residue, powder residue buildup over time in shooting, when that bolt goes forward and that residue that's on the face of the bolt actually impinges on the breech face and cuts into it. So even after a couple hundred rounds, you look at your bolt face, it looks like it's got little craters in it. I've had people tell me they shoot thousands and thousands of rounds, it doesn't bother anything. It hasn't bothered me, it hasn't bothered the rifle, it still keeps shooting. With this rifle here, in all the rounds I put through it, I've had one misfire in a match, and it's because the ammunition didn't fire. I use CCI standard velocity exclusively. There are others that work. I'm experimenting with Aguila right now. It's a little bit cheaper, see how that's going to hold up. But for match use, I'm using CCI standard velocity exclusively, and it works fine. So let's get into some close-up work. Okay, let's get into some close-up stuff now. What was done to the bolt and a little bit of talk about the trigger group and the receiver. So here's a stock bolt. It's been polished. I use a Scotch-Brite wheel, 6-inch Scotch-Brite wheel that is on my grinder. I polish all the surfaces, nice and smooth and shiny. I'm not too concerned about making a mirror finish. I just want them smooth. Having a mirror finish, the lubricant doesn't stay on as well. If you have little teeny imperfections, the lubricant will stay on better. So I'm not too crazy about making a mirror finish. I did on the outside here because there's no lubricant there. So the first thing I did is I rounded off this corner here. This corner is what rubs against the hammer face. And if you're on a stock gun, you feel that it's hard pulling the bolt back, and then it gets easy. This is more of a gradual transition. You hardly feel it. It's consistent all the way through the pull. So that really helps shooting at least standard velocity ammo, which may be one of the reasons why this gun functions so well with standard velocity. No problem there. The other thing I did was I chamfered these edges here and here. It aids this in reassembly. When you put the bolt back in, you're putting it in, you're putting it over the action rod, or it just slips in better. It just kind of falls right in. It's real easy to get in there. Another big complaint that people have is the firing pin movement. If you hold the bolt in your hand like I am, and you on the back of the firing pin, if you move that up or down, you can see the front of that firing pin move quite a bit. I haven't actually measured it, but it appears to be maybe 100,000ths of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. It moves up and down. It's quite a bit. So people say it contributes to misfires. So what they do is they, on the side here, they will drill a hole and put a roll pin in just above the top of that firing pin to keep it from moving. It's a great modification. Don't get me wrong. However, what's no one is showing you is that when you put the action rod back on, the top of this lines up with the top of the bolt, and that keeps that firing pin from moving up and down. It'll move slightly, maybe 20 to 30,000ths of an inch, but not much. It still makes great contact with the rim of the case. So I've not done that to mine because I don't see the need for it. So for now, it's until I think it's giving me a problem, it's going to stay unmodified. So before you drill and pin that, have a look at what I just did here and see if it makes sense to you. It does to me. This is a stock extractor. I don't mess with that at all. I take it apart and clean it a lot. Bolt face I've done nothing to as far as smoothing it out, making it flatter, polishing it. The depth is within spec to the cartridge head, so I don't worry about that. Other than that, it's stock. Oh yeah, I did modify the firing pin. So the front of the firing pin is pretty much square. Some of the Rugers come with a completely square face. Some are tapered a little bit. So I ground each side to make more of a point. The recommendation on YouTube is to make the flat portion about 30,000ths of an inch wide, 30 to 40. That's right where mine is. It gives you a deeper impression on the cartridge. Some people say that a wider firing pin will gap any imperfections in the priming compound, if there's a gap in the priming compound. I think with modern cartridges, that's pretty rare nowadays. Again, I've had one misfire in over 2,000 competition rounds with this gun. What I didn't mention, I'm going to mention it here in the first part of the video, was that I've had no malfunctions in this gun with the CCI standard velocity ammo. No malfunctions. Feeds flawlessly, extracts flawlessly, never double feed, so forth and so on, flawless. With bulk ammo, like high velocity bulk ammo that I shoot for practice, out of 500 rounds, I may get 2 that give me a problem, feeding and ejecting, and maybe another 2 with light primer hits, or not light primer hits, but cartridges that won't fire, that will fire on a restrike. But that's it. As far as cleaning goes, let's talk about that here. I clean my magazines after about 500 rounds. I'll shoot a match, which is generally 125 to 130 rounds. I'll practice before the next match. So if I get about 500 rounds through the gun, I take the magazines apart and clean them, put them back together. The magazines have been flawless. No modifications to those. Cleaning the gun. So we talked about earlier about the Tactical Solutions barrels getting pitted. It'll be right up in here, right up in here where they'll pit, right on the breech face from residue. So after every shooting session, and sometimes during a shooting session, if I go more than 200 rounds, I will wipe the bolt face, get all the residue off, and I'll wipe the face of the breech and get all the residue off as well, just so you don't get that deep pitting. I also drilled a hole in the back for cleaning rod access, so I can clean from the back now. There are dimensions on the internet you can find about where to do that. It's just a 5/16 hole that I put in there. It's just enough clearance for the rod and the cleaning material. Also, on the inside of the receiver, I polished all this in here and a few places where the bolt rides. You'll notice that if you take your gun apart, you'll notice that when the mounting screw holes are drilled and tapped, they will crater. So it will be like a mini volcano sticking up inside. You want to make sure you smooth those out. So I started out with some 600 grit emery paper, and I finished it off with a hard Arkansas stone to make that as smooth as I could. As far as lubrication goes, I started out with a whole bunch of different types of lubrication. And I did that for temperature reasons. Colder temperatures need lighter lubricants. It makes sense. So I took 5 different lubricants, put them in little bottles, put them in my refrigerator at 35 degrees and see what happens. A lot of them get pretty gummy at 35 degrees. That flow quite well at room temperature. I ended up testing, this is Marvell Mystery Oil. Marvell Mystery Oil, OW20 motor oil. I used REM oil, WD-40, LSA military oil, and I settled on Marvell Mystery Oil. It seems to be the most stable. And another reason why I use it is back in 1987, I had a gentleman named Don Hamilton build me a 1911. He's a 2-time Olympic shooter, made 2 Olympic teams. Unfortunately, never got to shoot because one was boycotted, and actually both were boycotted. So he never got to shoot, but he made the team. And he swore by this stuff. So I've been using it now all year round, hot and cold temperatures. It's been really good to me. I lubricate sparingly, but I lubricate in areas that need it. I lubricate this surface here with just a couple of drops. I also lubricate right in here. After the bolt is closed, I put a few drops, maybe only 1 drop, in here, work it back and forth. That's where it rubs on the top of the surface and on the inside of the surface. And I also put some in the spring channel, and I put some on the spring rod itself. And that's all the lubrication I do. I do take a little bit of grease and put it right here where the bolt contacts the hammer. Just a little bit of grease there. It's the only place I use grease anywhere. Now getting back to the trigger group. The only part that I worked on in the trigger group was the hammer itself, and I worked in the area of the sear engagement. I polished it, I changed the angle on it, I adjusted the depth on it, and there are people on the internet that'll tell you how to do it and how much to do it. I'm not going to talk about that here. There are no hammer shims in here. Again, it's all stock parts. Nothing's been added or taken away. Stock spring on the hammer. I want to make sure I get good consistent hits. I mentioned before my trigger pulls are down to 1.25 pounds. They're very light. This one has the over travel put in through the trigger guard. Find any way you want to do it. That works. I did cut the springs. I took a pound off the sear, a coil. I took a coil off the sear spring, and I took a coil off the trigger return spring. I don't want to go too light on the trigger return spring. Not that I'm as fast as Jerry Mikulik, but some people I believe can pull the trigger or manipulate their finger faster than they can, than the trigger can come back. So you want to be careful you don't go too light and get a sluggish trigger, especially if you're trying to get split times in the 0.12 to 0.15 second range. So just keep that in mind. All right, so I think I've covered all of the close-up stuff here. That's it. Okay, so let's wrap things up here. First, I want to apologize for not declaring a clear and safe gun when we first started. There's been a chamber flag in the whole time. The other gun has the bolt removed, so it was as safe as it could possibly be. One more thing about cleaning. There's several matches that I shot in against people that are ranked higher than me and are far better than me. And at the end of the match, I found out that I won the match and they were behind me. I talked to them later and find out why, and they said, well, I had a lot of gun malfunctions. I probably should have cleaned the gun. Why didn't you clean it? It's a Ruger. They last forever. And, you know, when they stop working, I clean them. Well, you don't want to find out they stop working during a match. So you want to clean your guns. You want to get them in tip-top shape, ready to go. Even after I clean my guns and put them back together, I'll fire 5 rounds to them, make sure it functions properly. I put everything back together properly. I don't want to find out at the match that I screwed something up. So hopefully this was informative. The point I'm trying to make, one of the points was that you don't need to spend a whole ton of money to get a really fine working gun. To be competitive is the main thing, and my guns do that. They make me very competitive in my matches. There's going to be more videos coming out. I've got a video coming out of my Ruger PC carbine that I shoot in USPSA competition. The mods I've done to that and how that gun fares next to the AR-15 style $2,000 guns. That is an entry-level gun. I don't have more than $150 of extra work and components into that gun, and it's very, very competitive with the AR-15 styles costing much, much more. So keep an eye out for that. I have some videos coming out about disassembly tools with Glock magazines, as well as posting more videos of shooting the rifles. So if you liked it, please click like, and if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. And in closing, I'd like to say that I am not a professional. This is for information purposes only. If you do anything that I've recommended here, you're doing it at your own risk. So take care, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon. And of course, if you got questions or comments, please post them and I'll get back to you right away. Take care.